earrings, but we're live. Never mind.
No, that's all right. You can still do that.
No, it's okay. It's not that serious. I had a moment of like girliness, but I can wait.
What up, everybody? Welcome. Episode 38 of Office Hours.
Hi.
I'm Sto. We flipped around the screens this time, so that's my bad. Also, apologies if you hear sounds. It's my dishwasher going on in the background. But Nora, how you doing today?
I'm good. Negotiation is one of my favorite things to talk about. So for folks who are joining us, first of all, welcome. Also, make sure you hit the subscribe, make sure you hit the like, all that good stuff. But I think today, more than any other episode, if you have like questions or things like that, drop it in the chat, drop it in the comments if you're watching afterwards. And we'll definitely answer those, because I know negotiation is something that there's a lot of like mythology about, there's a lot of questions about. So we're here to talk about it all.
Exactly. And you know, I think it kind of fits in line with the contracts episode that we did a while back to an extent. And I'll just start by saying one point that you brought up in that conversation is the fact that like negotiations don't have to be like bad. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be this. I don't know. I think when we hear negotiation, we always hear, first off, we always hear it in awful context. I feel like in media and stuff like that. But it really can be this productive conversation where both parties win yeah. In quotes.
Yeah, I mean, but not even win in quotes, like for real win. And I think we think traditionally when we talk about negotiation, we think about it like, how can I get the most out of you for the least amount from me? Like under capitalism, it's like super combative, and it doesn't have to be. And so kind of the way that I approach negotiation and how I invite folks to think about it moving forward is like, how can we create together the conditions that we both need, or we all need, to make this project or this thing successful? And so in that sense, you're not asking for the most money, you're asking for what you need to survive, or what you need to like get the project to be successful or to provide you a service. And I'm not losing money by paying you. I'm investing in this project that I'm a part of, or that I want. And so, and when you start to think about negotiation in these ways, you start to think beyond just like the money exchange to what else can we do and what else can we create, where we're thinking about how we can all get more rather than like thinking of a pie as like a small finite thing. So yeah, I get it. It's like super anxiety provoking. And I think maybe honestly, like a first step where we can start to talk about is where that anxiety comes from. Like we're afraid to hear no, we're afraid to be rejected. We think that if we don't get this money, like we're never going to get another opportunity, or never get like more money again, which is real, right? Like all of us are freelancers or consultants or gigging artists. So like the need for that money is real, but the less you allow the fear of no to control you, the more power you have in kind of setting your rate and negotiating from a place of power, rather than like fear or anxiety.
Right. And again, it's allowed to be an active conversation. I mean, obviously, depending on the realm that you're dealing with, of course, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be this tug of war, I guess, that I feel like. And I wanted to say the fear sometimes I feel like it's kind of based sometimes on a lot of what I feel like is reported. Like a lot of times when we hear about negotiations and stuff like that, like there really is sometimes like a winner and a loser. There's someone taking from someone else, or someone just straight up buying out someone else, or whatever. And then on a music side, obviously between label stuff, company stuff, I mean, we rarely see the headlines about here's a great negotiation that went down where both parties had something, where both parties went with something that helped them out. It's usually, oh my goodness, I can't believe such and such scammed somebody or whatever. So I feel like that stigma, I suppose, is kind of out there sometimes. So I think that can be sometimes what stops people from moving in negotiations and moving those conversations forward too.
That's such a good point, Sto, because what I'm thinking about is how often do we actually get to witness negotiations? Never.
That's it,
Very
right.
rarely, right? And then when we do, what is it? It's like some melodrama on TV or like, which of course is going to be contentious because watching like an easy negotiation is not good television. So like,
Right.
do you know what I mean? And so I think a lot of us have these like preconceptions about what negotiation actually is like. And so it's making me think about how many of my negotiations have been like contentious or like aggressive. Very few.
Right, exactly.
There, like the reality is most people want you to be happy when you're working with them. Most
Exactly.
people want to work with people who are happy working with them. And
Hmm.
so most people will approach a negotiation openly and like with the intention of like, yo, let's figure this out together. If
Right.
they don't, that tells you a lot of information about what working with them is like, how they value you. Like even that is important information for you to think about if they're like, we've talked about this in the contracts episode, which y'all maybe we'll link that in the description below because I think it's a really good episode and ties into a lot of what we talk about today. Um, if they're like rushing you about a negotiation or they don't want to, they're like mad at you for trying to go back and forth. That's their prerogative for sure, but it also tells you the kind of place that you're talking about. And I think this is partly why I really encourage people to like talk openly about their negotiations, talk about how much you're getting paid, because it's often not like what we're afraid that it's going to be like, and it's much more like easy conversation. And so hopefully that helps ease some of the anxiety and fear that folks have around it.
Right. And then this kind of goes alongside, I guess, the contracts conversation that we had as well. But just the idea that it doesn't have to be this again, and I'm only going sometimes again based on what we see on TV where it's this one and done, like, all right, we negotiated, that's it, like boom, done. It could be an open conversation where you, again, if things start off I do feel like we're calling back the other episode a lot, but it can be something where if things are working out to begin with, but then as things evolve or as people evolve, change, whatever, like you can renegotiate to fit where people are at now. It doesn't have to be the stone cold, well, 7 years ago you said, like people evolve and stuff like that. Things change, needs change and stuff like that. So it's okay to go back to the table and be like, okay, what works best for both of us? That's really what we negotiate at the top of all of this, is what's going to work best for both parties, even if it's going our separate ways, or whatever. But it's okay to have that conversation be open.
Yeah, something I want to highlight when you're thinking about negotiation is we often think about, and especially like women of color, we do this where it's like, well, I need you to pay me because I have to pay my bills, or I need you to pay me because it costs me money to make this thing. And that's not why anyone's paying you. They're paying you because you're an expert in what you're doing. You have a talent that no one else has. Only you can do this thing that they want you to do. And so when you're negotiating, even thinking about how you frame what you bring to the table is going to help kind of anchor what the conversation is about. And so it's not, pay me because I have student loans to give back. It's pay me because you're paying for my time, you're paying for my service, you're paying for my expertise, you're paying for me to be here and not 3 other places I could be gigging at or whatever it might be. And so even that, as we talk about like creating kind of these win-win scenarios, that's part of the framing, is you're paying me because you're getting something in exchange, not because you're paying me because I need the money to do those other things. And so it's a subtle thing, but it's also one of those things that helps you remember that even though, and we're kind of framing this as if like you're negotiating like you're getting paid, not the person doing the paying. But what we talked about a couple minutes ago about like power and the fear of saying no, one of the kind of antidotes to that is they should also be afraid of you saying no. You can also walk away. You can also say, hey, that's actually not worth my time. Or, hey, someone else is offering more for this gig. Or, hey, I can license this here for this percentage. And you can walk away. And so the incentive is not just that the let's call them like the employer can say no to you. You can also say no to them. And that's part of how we start to equalize the power dynamic so that you can go into a negotiation with power and strength and leverage.
Exactly. And with I wanted to say, like we were talking a lot about like negotiations in the framework of contracts, but even if you're, again, working with a team, or I don't know, I literally any type of like work where, I mean, again, where teamwork is involved for an extended amount of time. It doesn't necessarily even have to be an exchange of funds per se, but like if you're working on a project with someone or working on XYZ, it's okay to sit down and like really negotiate. Okay, here's what we're doing. Like this is what like how everything's going to work out, so that everyone's on the same page. And again, that like I do think when people, myself included, hear negotiations, we think like labels and contracts and sometimes sports, I guess, and stuff like that. But negotiations really can be for almost anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and not, you're right. And I think we think about negotiation in terms of just like money, but
Exactly,
there's
right.
so much else that you can negotiate, right? You can negotiate social media access. You can negotiate tools. You can negotiate roles. You can negotiate access to things. I mean, and so, maybe this is a question I get a lot, is artists who, and I know a lot of you can relate. Well, they're like, oh, well, we can pay you. There's no budget, but we can pay you an exposure. And then you're like,
but wait a minute. How did you get here to begin with, man? I already got the exposure because you came to ask for help. So how are you gonna?
So this is a good place, and maybe they really don't have money.
Right.
Like who? Also, it's irrelevant. So this is where for you to think about first, what is your big picture and the thing that is actually going to help you get to your goal. Not so sometimes it's not money. Like especially early in your career, or you're like trying to get into a new field or a new lane, money might actually not be the most important thing for you. Maybe there are other things that you value that are going to help you get to where you want to go. So for you to think about when you're negotiating, what is it that you actually want? And also understanding what is it that they actually want and need. And sometimes for them, it's not about money, it's about other things too. So if they come to you with, do it for the exposure, and you decide that money is the most important thing for you, you can walk away and say, no, thank you, and refer someone else.
Right.
But if you decide that, okay, well, money isn't the most important thing, then you can think about what else would be valuable to you. Is it social media exposure? Is it introductions? Is it footage for your reel or your deck? Is it a merch table? There's all these things that you can think about. And then you can negotiate those things specifically. So going back to your points, though, really talking about, okay, we're not going to talk about money, but let's talk about, how many times are you going to promote me on your social media? Or are you going to share your email list with me? Or are you going to include me in your mailing list? And how many times and for how many months? And, you can, in the same way that you would negotiate all the like nitty gritty of a financial exchange, if you're doing things, and I call this creative compensation, right? These are all the different ways you can be compensated. It's not about cash. It's about a million other things that you find valuable. You still want to talk about all those things. And one thing you can do is bundle what you're being compensated with. So maybe they can pay you, but they're paying you like way under your rate. You can say, okay, cool, I'll take the like $5, but I also want you to pick me up at the airport and pay for my food while I'm there. Or, okay, I want this and also passes for 4 of my friends and an invitation to next year's festival where I have like higher billing. Or though, like every point is something you can negotiate, and you don't have to only negotiate one thing at a time. You can create, is that your dishwasher?
That's my dishwasher. That's why I was like, oh God, what have I done?
That's so funny. It sounds like a grown man is like standing over your shoulder.
Like, just growling in my ear or something. Like, oh jeez.
But yeah, so one thing to think about when you're negotiating is to think about what are the things that really are important to you, and then how can you bundle and package them so that you're not just going one at a time, but can kind of form a compensation package for yourself.
Right. Right. Absolutely. The one thing I wanted to make sure to touch on too is like, even if a negotiation doesn't necessarily end with like you working together or whatever, that doesn't mean that like, you know, everything's done and that the relationship just dies and like we don't have to have like beef over it and stuff like that. I feel like sometimes, and it doesn't have to have, I guess, this huge negative, this cloud, this negative connotation over it. Like, you know, I feel like sometimes when negotiating, people hear no or things don't necessarily work out the way as planned, like sometimes there can be like harbored feelings and stuff like that. I don't know how to explain that, but
yeah, like as if there's bad feelings because I didn't get what I wanted or you didn't get what you wanted. And it doesn't have to be that way. We talk about this. Have we done a networking episode? I talk about this in my networking workshops. Like
that's a good question.
I get them sometimes like the
I'm
wires.
pretty sure we have. Like there's so many episodes now. There's definitely crossover.
My wires cross. But yeah, like it's not personal. This is about getting what you need to do the best job that you can. And sometimes it just doesn't work.
Right.
And that's perfectly fine. I wanted to talk a little bit on some of the like negotiation myths that I hear a lot of.
Yeah.
And I think the first, I wonder if I could write these in the chat and see if people want to, we can make a game out of it.
Oh Lord.
Okay. It's best to negotiate over DM.
I mean,
is this true or false?
Hey, please tell me you haven't heard that, because I think it. I mean, I'm not saying it's okay. I'm not saying it's not possible, because I've definitely done it, but it's not like the prime way to like get stuff done for sure.
Yeah, definitely. This is false. You, as much as possible, want to negotiate face to face or over the phone.
Or over the phone, right.
And that's because it's a lot easier to text no than to say no to you. And it's a lot easier to come back with an alternative. Someone texts no, and you're just like, okay.
Okay, all right.
If Sto says no to me now, I can come back and say, hey, but actually, hey. So it's not best to negotiate over DM. When you negotiate in person or over the phone, there's a lot more space for back and forth, and you get so much more information about what the other side wants and values that then you can use to frame the negotiation. Whitney says DMs are bad. They can be deleted. It's bad for records. Yes. And a DM does not take the place of an actual contract. So even if you have been negotiating in the DMs and you come to an agreement, you still want to send a contract that you're both signing. That's, worst case scenario, you have your DMs as a screenshot, but like that, it doesn't take the place of a contract or an email thread that everyone is copied on.
Exactly.
Okay, here's another myth I hear a lot about. The other side should always make the first offer. True or false?
Wait, what do you mean by the other side? Like
if you and I are negotiating, I should wait for you to make the first offer.
Oh, geez. I don't know. I don't even know about that one. If you're, as in, you're asking me for a service, you're saying?
Either way.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's okay to just have an open conversation, to be completely honest. I've never, it's like the whole, do I text first or do I wait 3 days? Like, it's the same thing. It's just like whatever. If you want to work, let's get to work. Like, I don't know. That's how I've always felt about it.
So the conventional wisdom is you always let the other side name their price first, whether they're offering or they're asking, so that you can lowball them. Or if you're thinking more and they come less, then you're like, cool, I'll just give you less, and you didn't know that I was going to give you more.
Right.
That's the conventional wisdom. It doesn't always work to your benefit, because if you let the other side make an offer and they offer way lower than what you were thinking or what you had in mind, they've now, or they offer way higher than what you were wanting to pay and you had in mind. They've now anchored the conversation. And what it forces you to do is come closer to meeting them. So if you were going to offer $10, but they're asking for $50, you're going to counter with closer to 50 than you would have to 10. So it forces, right? It forces the price change. And so by making the first offer, you can anchor the conversation closer to what you want to get paid or what you want to pay someone. So it can be a very strategic thing. And if they're righteous about it, then there can be that back and forth, right? But making the first offer may or may not is something you can be really strategic about. And as PQ is saying, I've had better luck making the first offer. Oh, and Whitney, this is a great point. Waiting for an offer can make it seem like you don't know your value. So this is something that if you're someone who does like consulting work or steady gig work, it can be really helpful to just have your standard rate, just know it, right? And know it like really confidently, so that it's not always this like, how can I get the most out of you? It's, this is my rate. Can you meet me there or not?
Exactly.
So that, yeah, go ahead, Sto.
No. Again, with like consulting and stuff like that, I definitely like, I think it helps. And because I feel like I've had kind of that experience because like once you lay down waiting for an offer, I don't know, the whole conversation is always so like confusing, I feel like sometimes. But I feel like when you do stand on your value and you're able to, I don't know, really put that out there before things really start to roll, like you can't, because people, I'm sorry, y'all, like people will try to lowball you. Like that happens a lot. So I see both sides, but I
mean, I think part of the anxiety around negotiation is the fear that you're going to get lowballed, right? Or that you're not going to get as much as you could have gotten.
Right.
So if you know what your price is, right? And you say, I charge $25 per performance, or I charge $76 an hour, whatever, right? Like, you know clearly for yourself as an entrepreneur, as a creative, as an artist, what your going rate is, then you don't have to have that negotiation with yourself every single time this comes up of what am I going to charge this person?
Exactly.
Because you're charging everybody the same. And then when they ask for your rate, you can say in all your full confidence, this is my going rate. And we'll do a whole episode in the new year around how to actually decide your rate, because I know that's a whole other thing. And so we'll talk about that in the future. But this way, if you know what your standard rate is, then it's not a negotiation. It's just simply, can you meet me there?
Exactly.
And if you can't meet me there, what else can you offer to compensate for that? And that's the stuff we were talking about earlier. I think it just makes it a lot easier to know. And this is where I think something else that's really helpful that we haven't touched on yet is knowing what your deal breakers are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, what are you willing to adjust? What are you willing to not adjust? And this could be financial, like I won't work for less than like $50 an hour. Or it could be like, I won't work with people who talk to me this way. Working from home is really important. So if I have to be in office, that's a deal breaker. Like you can think about your tangible things, but also non-tangible things when you're having the negotiation, in addition to the rate that you've already decided is standard for you.
And again, you know, it goes back to again what I feel like Whitney was saying too, is like, it's regardless of the side that you're on. And like, I've been processing what Whitney's been saying this whole time because it kind of threw me for a loop. But regardless of the side that you're on, it's okay to stand on whatever you believe your value to be. Like it doesn't make either party incorrect unless you're, you know, being a scumbag. But like, you know, if you're having a legitimate negotiation and both parties, you know, are holding their value, and again, are holding to their deal breakers too, like that's okay as well. it's not, it doesn't have to be, well, one party has deal breakers and the other one's not allowed to have any because I have my deal breakers. You know what I mean? So having it be an active and flowing conversation is important.
Yeah. And that comes back to the beginning. It's like treating negotiation as negotiation is problem solving.
Right.
Right.
Together.
Yes. Together. The problem is we want to do something together. What is it going to take for us to come together? And part of that is timing and schedule and logistics. And part of that is also compensation and money and perks and all that other stuff. And so if you look at it as you and whoever you're negotiating with are on the same side against the problem versus you're on opposite sides of the table, you're going to come up with much better solutions. You're going to come up with win-win solutions where there is no loser, right? Negotiation is not like sliding the piece of paper across the table and then they look at it like that's all.
Right, exactly.
That's all movie shit.
Right.
Another tip that I want to share with folks, and if you're watching this, please remember what's in the chat. Those are all false. It is not best to negotiate over DM, and
right.
you can be strategic about who makes the first offer. I feel like I should have caveated those. The other thing that I think is important for people to remember when you're negotiating is don't be afraid to slow down. Don't be afraid to pause. Don't be afraid to say, hey, you know what? I need to think about this.
Mm-hmm.
And you can really use silence to your benefit because if you're negotiating with someone, if you just stop and people will often just keep talking and they'll say things to fill the space. And so practice naming your rate, practice making your ask so for example, I hear people say, I charge $500, but if that's too much, I could do it for less. Well, if you could do it for less, I'm going to ask you to do it for less. Right.
I used to do that. I'm not even going to front on that.
Practice saying, I charge $500, period, full stop.
Exactly. Because your work is worth it. That's the thing. Again, that's what I was saying earlier. Both sides, even if they can't afford that, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But it is okay for you to, keep going.
No, sorry. Yes, that. And also, don't cut yourself out of the negotiation before they've already had the chance.
Exactly.
So you are so afraid of hearing no that you already say no before they said it to you. Literally, I'm not even kidding when I tell you go practice this, practice saying it out loud, practice writing it in an email, because this is where when you say something with confidence, the other side, if you believe that you're worth it, the other side will believe it. And we do this so often where we say something and take it back. And so you undermine yourself before the negotiation. And so practice. Yes, exactly. This is a really good book, Never Split the Distance, but name what you want and then shut up. Don't say anything and let them respond. This is also true when you're going back and forth and they're like, well, can you do this? Can you do right? And in the negotiation, again, it doesn't have to be, it's not like you're playing ping pong. You can stop and you can catch the ping pong ball and say, hold on, let me think about this.
Right.
Do some calculation. I'm terrible at doing math really quickly. So I'll be hold on, let me pull out my calculator. Let me do some number crunching.
Right.
Or you can say, let me think about this. I'll get back to you tomorrow. Or don't be afraid to shut up, as Whitney says, but to really sit in that silence and allow yourself to process and decide what you want. And in that gap, you never know what the other side might reveal or offer because they're going to get nervous or they're going to get antsy. Silence really, really, really is a great tool for you when you're negotiating.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't, like Nora just said, it really doesn't have to be this ping pong match. If it goes back to standing by your value and standing by what you bring to the table. If that's what the price is, that's what it is. Let it go. And again, rejection is part of that process. There's going to be some negotiations that work out. There's going to be some that do work out. It goes both ways. but don't let it stop you from having that conversation, because it's important. It's important to negotiate with people. It's important to have these conversations and know what you're getting and being able to work with people together and stuff like that. So, don't let the rejection or from one negotiation stop you from negotiating. What is with that word? Dang it. Negotiating with others.
Yeah.
Because it's important and it helps us work together and stuff like that.
Yeah. One of the things I tell folks in my workshops is to practice negotiating. Like
Right.
if you practice negotiating kind of low hanging, no risk things, it just becomes easier when you negotiate something big and scary and high value to you. So like call your internet company and see if you can negotiate.
Right.
Next time you're trying to park somewhere, see if you can negotiate. I was at Macy's one time and I negotiated a discount. Like just go practice at different places so that you get used to negotiating and so that you get used to the rejection. If
That
you
too, right.
like, there's value in hearing no so many times that you're like, all right, cool, doesn't faze me anymore, on to the next. Because then when you're in again that high level negotiation, the muscle memory is there, you have the practice, you have the skills, and you're not as afraid of something that you were afraid of before because you've already experienced it.
Exactly.
So that's another thing. If we were to give you office hours homework, it would be to go practice naming your rate in front of a mirror, practice saying it to a friend, practice emailing it, practice writing it out, but also go practice negotiating. Don't negotiate with small businesses or like independent artists, but go negotiate with some of the corporations that you deal with on a daily basis and see if you can get a discount or something for yourself.
And learn your damn value. I feel like a lot of us kind of head into negotiating situations without knowing what we bring to the table. Like I know I personally, I had to sit down and be like, wait a minute, this is everything that I do and stuff like that. Because then again, it gives you more confidence heading into those negotiations. It's hard for people to lowball you and do stuff like that when you know what you bring to the table.
This is so true. And everyone I've ever worked with says this. It's so much easier to negotiate for other people than for myself. But why is that, right? Because we see the dopeness in other people. We see the value in the people that we advocate for. But then we're like, oh, but me, I don't know. And we like doubt ourselves, or we're afraid for the impact for ourselves. When I started negotiating, actually, the way I started to learn was because I was negotiating on behalf of an artist. And I knew that I would lowball because of my own stuff around money. And so just automatically I forced myself. Some of you might have heard me tell this story before. I forced myself. If I was going to ask for $1,000, I asked for $2,000. If I was going to, like, whatever I was going to ask for him, because I knew that I was usually on the lower side, I forced myself to double it. And what happened was people were like, yeah, no problem. Here you go.
Right.
Okay, so I could ask for more now. And so it was in learning to negotiate for him that then I was like, well, why can't I do this for myself? And so again, it's building that developing that muscle, because we don't negotiate until we have to. And so this way, if you can give yourself permission to negotiate before you have to, it's going to be so much easier when you're in a situation where it's no longer new and scary and intimidating. It's someplace where you're like, oh, I've been here before.
Exactly.
Yeah. So there's a lot. We'll talk about negotiation a lot. There's a Instagram episode. If you go to my Instagram, where Sto and I did a office hours Instagram, where we also talk about different aspects of negotiation. Go back and check the content, the contracts episode. If you have questions as you're watching this, drop it in the comments. We'll always come back and answer them. And you can always catch us both on Twitter and Instagram and online. Sto and I both do one-on-one consulting. Definitely, y'all, hit the like button, subscribe, share this with your friends. Negotiation really is one of those things. I think that the more we talk about it publicly, the more like we all win, because it's no longer the secret thing that happens that no one knows about. It becomes transparent. And now all of a sudden, if I know Sto is getting X amount of dollars, well, now I can advocate for myself and we can both win this way. So this is especially a good episode to share. What are we talking about next episode? Building your team. Okay.
Trying to look at a calendar that's not there. But yeah, building your team. Yeah, that'll be our second to last episode of the year. But yeah, we'll be back here in 2 weeks. We appreciate you all for coming through
So much.
and getting involved and leaving questions and just discussing with us. It really means a lot. Again, make sure to leave a like, follow us on all the platforms. I don't know. I'm so tired. I don't even know what's going on. But seriously, join us in 2 weeks, same time. Talk about building your team. Honestly, leave your team building questions. If there are questions that you have, like that'll help us kind of move the conversation along too. So do that. Drink some water. Get some rest. The year's winding down. I can already feel myself burning out, so I can only imagine how some of you are feeling out there. So take some time to get some rest. Drink some damn water. Get a damn website before the new year. Come on, people. We got to do that. All right. We'll be back soon. All right.
Peace, y'all.
Everyone.